Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Jackson Frank, a reporter for Dime, and he wrote an incredible profile on Quentin Grimes. If you missed part one of our conversation from, I think it was this Monday, go check it out. If you're all caught up, though, enjoy this part two, where we get into Quentin Grimes' future on the Knicks and some keys for Knicks-Cavs. All that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. If you're not aware, now you are. We are available on all platforms. That includes on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube for the first time or the millionth time, remember to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. One more shout out before we get started with Jackson, and it goes to our good friend Mimar Sinan, a.k.a. the Stormbringer, a.k.a. your old pal. If you don't know Mimar, he is an incredibly good dude, and he is the guy who made our intro music for the Locked On Knicks podcast. And if you're listening on the podcast side, you might have heard that there is a little update to it to include the Julius Randle double bang. So just wanted to shout out Mimar. You can follow him on Twitter at Mimar Sinan Music. And he wants you guys to know that Mimar Instrumentals Volume 3 is coming soon. In the meantime, people can check out all of his work, including his latest, the Kingston tapes, on all audio platforms. So shout out to Mimar. Shout out to Julius Randle for getting the double bang. Praying for his health, and looking forward to this conversation with Jackson Frank, where we get more into Quentin Grimes, his future on the Knicks, his fit on the Knicks, how he could potentially be the fulcrum of a star trade, someone else I'd prefer to be the fulcrum of a star trade, and then some quick thoughts on Knicks-Cavs. All that and more right now on Locked On Knicks. Continuing to talk Quentin Grimes, we're going to get a little bit into Knicks-Cavs as well. But man, I thought you hit the nail on the head in, like, obviously, like, and this wasn't really something you touched on the story. Like, I'm kind of curious if it came up, but like, he was obviously very much in trade talks over the summer. Unless it did come up in the story, I'm forgetting, and I apologize if it did. But
no, nothing in the story.
So he was in trade talks over the summer, and he was in. And honestly, like, if I were him, I would be flattered, because it was about a young multi-time All-Star in Donovan Mitchell, someone who's now like a consensus top 15 to 20 guy in the NBA, and he was allegedly like the holdup over the and that. Thank you. Yeah, affirmation. There we go. Yeah, and he was the guy the Knicks did not want to part with. And I was very supportive of that idea, because to everything you said, he is and the way Emmanuel quickly has developed, it's like a little less unique, but at his size, at 6'5", like, he is very much unique on this team in terms of his ability to make quick decisions, to be that secondary creator, just to keep everything moving along, the gears turning, the trains running on time. Like, he provides that little jolt of, like, on one hand, predictability in that he's going to make the right play every time, but also unpredictability in that he is a very creative passer. And he is, unlike really anyone over the last few years on the Knicks, like, wanting to reward the Knicks big men. Like, he had a play the other day where he, Isaiah Hartenstein tapped the ball to him. He was wide open under the rim, and he passed up a layup to give Obi Toppin a dunk. Like that is such a clear internal emphasis for him. And I think for on the court reasons, but also just for team chemistry, like, he is so essential in so many different ways. And his defense is absolutely pivotal. And because of that, I'm really curious of your perspective, like, given those discussions this past summer, given developments like Emmanuel quickly looking like he could be an all-star one day, like, what your opinion is of his future on the team. Because I think everything I said can be true, but there are going to be financial realities. And even more so than that, there's going to be the reality that the Knicks' number one goal, and Leon Rose, even though he's not really willing to talk, like his actions speak loudly, that the goal is still to get an A1 star in the building. And as great as Jalen Brunson has been, as great as Julius Randle has been, right, they're not necessarily those guys. So I guess I don't know exactly what I'm asking, but maybe as broadly as possible, like, what do you see as his, like, the future of him as a player, and like that future on the Knicks, both in terms of his aspirations? Like, you have a quote in there, like, I think it was the pull quote you used for the article. I'm gonna find it here because I don't want to get it wrong. Yeah, it's from his trainer, Matt Evans, right?
I think he's like Matt is one of his like closest friends and also
Right.
his manager.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Matt said, quote, he just knows how to get to where the moon is, right? And that sounds like a guy with high aspirations to be. He's mastered the little stuff, but he still wants the big stuff. In the last 10 games, I think it's like 22 points per game now, last 7 games, like have shown that like that's the ceiling that's possible for him. Like, is that going to be on the Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say whether it'll be on the Knicks or not, just because I don't know who's going to be available. I don't know who, even if players become available, if they make sense for the Knicks necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think wherever he's going to be really successful. I'm curious to see where he takes the next step offensively next year. I don't think he's perfect defensively, but I think he kind of, just with natural continued progression, he's a guy who, I expect to at least be someone who people talk about as an all defensive candidate. I don't think he's necessarily going to get that recognition this year. But a guy that I think just continues to progress, he's pretty young too for a guy who played 3 years in college. I think he turns 23 either in April or May. So maybe he's not mad, I guess, but still, like, I mean, he's just, he's not like a guy who played 3 years in college and is 24 now or something like that already in year 2. Yeah, so I'm curious, kind of, can he be a guy that maybe you occasionally run a secondary pick and roll for next year? Where does the handle get to? Can he get an intermediate game? Because he's got the 3-point, he's got the jumper down, and he's got the finishing down. But there's not much of an intermediate game to him, right? There's not really much of a pull up, not a floater. So I'd be curious, kind of the other things he tries to address. Like I said, with the handle too. Like, he's got a really good first step attacking off the catch, but he's not necessarily a super zippy or bursty player, kind of from a standstill necessarily. So those would be kind of the things that I'm curious about moving forward. But yeah, he's just, I mean, a guy who can finish, space the floor, guard 1 through 2.5, 3, really, really capably. Pretty good rebounder from the guard position as well when the Knicks need more of that. I can't remember which game I was watching recently. Maybe it was one of the Heat game that they won, where he just had like 5 rebounds in the first 2 minutes, something like that. It was just,
Yeah. He had 8 points and 4 rebounds in the first, I think it was 2.5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. He had a magnet for the ball, but yeah. So just a guy who's already projected as a really complimentary ancillary starter. Where can you go from there? Where can you get to, a high level starter? Right? I think he's a good starter, but can you get to that top 50 to 60 player range where you're like in a year where everything breaks right, he's a guy you're considering, for all-star consideration. I'm not saying this is where I see his ceiling, but those are the next steps that I see for him, right? Because I already think he's already a plus impact starter on a team that won 47 games, if I'm mistaken, 47.
Exactly.
And so yeah, and it was 47 or 48, I couldn't remember, but because the Pacers came back and won.
Yeah, he came close. Grimes came close to getting us there.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the next steps for me. Like I said, just more of an intermediate game. Can you have a little more ball handling? Can you have some sort of ball handling competency? Just second side stuff. And the Knicks, obviously with their ISO heavy offense, I don't know if that's necessarily something they're going to need a lot of as long as Brunson and Randall are in the fold, but quickly as well. That's kind of where all the creation rests in that team, and it's obviously very effective. But that's kind of the next step, because at some point he's going to be in a different team environment, whether it's a different look of this Knicks roster or it's a different team in general. It's going to be an environment for him in his NBA career, I imagine, at some point where he is maybe someone who could be looked upon to take more of that usage on, a little more prominent on ball role. So those would be the steps for me. But yeah, I think for now it's just continuing to refine what he does well. And I'm like, I really am curious, like, if next year's the year that we see some all defensive talk for him, because I'm sure it's there in Knicks crowds, and it is a tough, like, I mean, the defensive. Yeah. I think there's so, like, as good as the offense is these days, like, there's still so many incredible defenders both in the front court and the back court. But I do hope that soon we get a wider appreciation for his defense, and maybe that comes in these playoffs. Maybe he uses it as a springboard. He's going to get his fair share of reps against 2 all-star / all NBA caliber guards and Garland and Mitchell, and if they win that series, he'll have his fair share of opportunities against whoever else they play. So that would be the hope, is maybe we can springboard a great playoff showing against 2 great guards into a little more all defense buzz moving forward. Because I don't know if he's necessarily there right now, but I think he is a guy that should get more mention of that. Maybe I'm just missing national talks praising him, so that could be the case. But it doesn't feel like he's quite mentioned in the same breath as some of those other really really good guards on the defensive end, despite maybe being worthy of that consideration.
All right, guys, we'll be back with Jackson to continue our conversation in just a sec. But before we do that, we got to award Nissan's Most Electric Player of the Week, and it's brought to you by the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. And the guy I got to give it to, this is a break from how we normally hand out the award, but it's going to be a guy who has not played in a little while, but someone I'm hoping is playing on Saturday night, and that is Julius Randle, because he has had an absolutely electric season. What's really flashed to me is the fierce elegance that he's played with this year, right? Because he is a human bowling ball, just torturing smaller defenders, running through them, almost like a prime Ray Lewis hopped up on deer antler spray. But then he gets to the rim, and he has just a fluid game to him, right? Like the double pumps, the up and unders, all of the above with Julius Randle. But he's also this brilliant like finesse passer. Like he is the one guy I know who combines stunning power and also just a general sense of brilliant fierceness. The 2023 Nissan Ariya is similar in that it packs pin to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive, and you can shop now at nissanusa.com. Yeah, I feel like for whatever reason, defensive like recognition always lags a year or two behind. Like you need a resume, particularly at the guard spot, just because it's not flash plays. I know B-Ball Index had a stat like that he had the highest degree of difficulty matchups in the NBA of any player in the league this year. So he's getting his reps in that respect. But I'm totally with you from a big picture perspective. I mean, I think his greatest strength like is his fungibility, right? Like we were talking about that this offseason. Like it's why he's a guy you don't want to lose. Is like you could plug him in for any team in the league. Probably going to be playing at least 20 minutes per game. He's probably like, if nothing horrible happens, like he's going to be in the league for 12 to 14 years. Like that is just who he is at a baseline. And then anything you get from there is gravy. And like similar things were said about Mikal Bridges. Like obviously he's not there as quickly, but like the comp we were making all summer was like Desmond Bane. Like that would be kind of a goal. And Bane has done it with the consistency and with a level of efficiency that Grimes has done now for 8 games. But you hope he can do it when it really matters. You hope he can do it against great defenses that are locked in. And to me, like a lot of like his place on the Knicks comes down to one guy we didn't really talk about in RJ Barrett and how Barrett continues to develop. And maybe this is counterintuitive, but I almost think the better Barrett becomes, the more likely Grimes is to be able to like stay on this team up to a certain point. Where if you could have RJ be the centerpiece of that star trade and keep Grimes, I think that would be the dream, because Grimes is someone who, to my previous point, just would fit in much better around like theoretical star wing X that the Knicks don't have. Obviously, if RJ gets so good, then he will be that guy. I have very real doubts about that after this year, but I think there's a happy middle ground where you get to keep Grimes. Or maybe you one day have to trade one of Brunson or Randall because Grimes is just that good of a fit next to a star. All interesting questions, all kind of nebulous, sort of meaningless at this point. What's a little less nebulous and what I want to finish on, Jackson, is the Knicks start a playoff series next week, which we should be celebrating because it doesn't happen too often, unfortunately, around these parts. But what are your initial thoughts on Knicks-Cavs and how the two teams match up?
Yeah, it's been kind of a hectic few days, so I haven't thought a lot about any of the 4 matchups that are finalized at the moment. Maybe aside from Sixers Nets a little bit, because I do a decent amount of coverage on the Sixers specifically. But I'm really excited for Knicks Cavs. They've played, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 really really intriguing games this year. I guess if from a Knicks perspective, I don't like the one when Brunson dropped 48 was very intriguing. It wasn't a super close game by the end. I know the Knicks kind of won. And I know Allen was out. Obviously, Randall was out too. So 2 key players missing, or a key player missing for each side. But I've really enjoyed a lot of the games they've played this year. I'm fascinated to see how each team goes about defensive coverages in the front court at their 4 and 5 spots. So it's a very different kind of set of, like, I think, broadly you could compare Allen and Mitch Robb in similar ways. I think there's obviously much more nuance to distinguish their games, but then Randall and Mobley are so contrasting, and just kind of the way that the Cavs and kind of go about defending Randall too. I think back to maybe they played in January, December, and they couldn't quite figure out who to put on Randall, and I think there was a game that the Knicks won. So I'm curious about that. I'm curious kind of what Emmanuel quickly can look like. I just wrote a piece, another Knicks piece for for Dime on him that came out on Saturday, and obviously, all Knicks fans and writers and whatnot know that a big key for him this year has been becoming a competent inside the arc scorer, and that I imagine will be a very tough thing against the duo of Allen and Mobley. So, what does he look like there? What does Randall look like in a playoff setting? Obviously, Knicks fans know last time that was the case, it did not go very well. I think he's a better player than he was 2 years ago. I think his decision making is better, some of his passing vision. And then what does Randall look like in a first option? He loves to get to the mid range. Is that going to be someone that, do the Cavs find a way to bother him, or does he continue to have some success in that range? Despite the Cavs having two incredible defensive big men. So those are the things I'm looking at. The Cavs, the Knicks play that no middle defense, a lot of aggressive help with the nail. The Cavs are not renowned for their floor spacing, of course. So, kind of, what does the push and pull of that look like if Okoro gets hot, or they play Dean Wade and he gets hot, or Evan Mobley has a great, I know he's been really poor from three this year, but ends up taking a few and keeping the defense honest somehow. So, the balance of that, against Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland running their pick and rolls, just a lot of really, really intriguing things to look at. I think among the four series that have been finalized, this one and then Kings Warriors to me are the two most exciting right now. That obviously can change as we get the play-in clarity, but I'm really excited for this matchup. The Cavs and Knicks have been two of my favorite teams to watch this year. I think it's going to be a really good series. I don't necessarily have a prediction or anything like that, but I do expect it to be a much more competitive series than the last time the Knicks were in the playoffs, because I remember thinking back to that series and being pretty optimistic about the Hawks' chances. Obviously, that ended up being the case, but I do like the Knicks' chances, at least of. I'm not saying they're going to win necessarily, but I do just think it's going to be a really, really good series, as you would hope a 4-5 series is. So, I really, really am looking forward to this one for sure.
All right, guys, we're going to be back with Jackson one final time to wrap up his thoughts on Knicks-Cavs and some of mine. But first, if you're looking for a delicious snack but don't want all that sugar and calories, raise his hand, then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. It's Built. You got to try this if you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste. I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and tasty and amazing. Seriously, they taste so good, you won't even think they're good for you. You just got to try them. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they are all covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They come in crazy flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but they taste like a candy bar while maintaining these incredible macros. They're healthy, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And you don't need to wait for a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can just get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club while still getting your specialty flavors, your favorite ones, at Built.com. That's right. Head to the nearest Walmart today, walk to a pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie, batter, puff, and churro puff. You guys can thank me later. Yeah, I think there's definitely like a little like PTSD, at least on my end, from that series, and just looking back on it and being like, all right, I kind of thought that team was for real. Like, it didn't end up being the case. And then this team, like the metrics tell you, right, like that it is sort of for real. And they kind of say something that I struggle to believe, that the Knicks are maybe a top 7 or so team in the NBA this year. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, all right, like I need to see it to believe it. Like, I need to see Julius like take a unexpected double team and not throw the ball away. I need to see quickly like replicate what he did against the Boston Celtics this year and have a monster game, like going up against a Donovan Mitchell and a Darius Garland. And part of me wonders if it's still like maybe not for Randall, maybe not for Brunson, who's already gotten it done on this stage even before he got it done as a full-time starter. But maybe for the other guys in the Knicks, this is just a year too early. And we're going to see that. I hope that's not the case. Like, I really think the series is going to come down to, like, as you noted, like which team's role players can hit open threes. Because I think it's weird to call him a role player, but I think RJ Barrett's going to be given a million open threes in this series. I think Josh Hart is going to be dared to prove that his 3-point shooting on the Knicks is more real than his 3-point shooting on Portland was. Grimes is not going to be giving open threes, but he's going to be getting hard closeouts and going to be like, all right, are you still making those like really nifty like slip passes when Evan Mobley's like 20-foot long arms are like in your way? I think he can, but we're going to find out. So it's like I mean, that's the beauty of playoff basketball, right? Even if it goes bad for the Knicks, like it's this like great mirror where you're like, you can be really honest with yourself about as a franchise of what you have. And to me, like that's kind of the greatest victory for the Knicks this year as a whole is like last season, like when we were talking about that Donovan Mitchell trade, like I thought part of the reason like the Jazz, were asking for so much pick equity was like Tibbs didn't really do a good job of highlighting Quentin Grimes, of highlighting Emmanuel Quickly, of highlighting Obi Toppin, and that's still an issue, but that's a conversation for another day. And this season, like if nothing else, like those things have been accomplished. Like we know who Quickly can be, we know who Quentin Grimes can be, and I think this will be like another like test to that, not in terms of like trading them, but just in terms of like the Knicks, like knowing what they have. And I'm pretty confident it's going to go well. Sounds like you are too, Jackson, a real ally to Knicks Nation with those two articles. And I really appreciate your insight on Grimes, on Quickly, on the team as a whole. Before I let you go, can you just tell everyone where they can find all your great work one final time?
Yeah, dog's going crazy again. You can follow me on Twitter at JackFrank_JJF. Those two articles that I mentioned with Grimes and Quickly are both on Dime. I think you can just search my name with Dime Uprocks and my bio or what my byline or whatever will come up there. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the playoffs or just the postseason in general. But yeah, like I said, I think Knicks-Cavs is going to be one of the more enjoyable series of the entire playoffs. And I think what's cool, and this isn't just like prematurely on the next season, but I think they're going to be in a very good spot regardless of how this playoff run goes, especially compared to how the went 2 years ago. I just think it's a much more sustainable group. I think with Randall 2 years ago, or again, then last year with the regression, they didn't really have anywhere else to turn. Whereas now that they've got it Quickly, they've got a Brunson offensively. So I really like what the Knicks have in place. With their balance of win now guys and young guys who are also able to win now, but can impact winning even more in their primes on the line. So yeah, thanks for having me on. And for your sake and the sake of Knicks fans, I hope it's a really, really enjoyable series. And I'm looking forward to it. Is that a Saturday or Sunday game?
Saturday night.
Okay. All right. Well, I will be tuned in intently.
All right. And we'll have plenty more coverage for you on Locked On Knicks. Full series preview coming up tomorrow with the boys over at Locked On Cavs. And man, music to my ears, sustainable. I hope everyone tuning in sustainably listens to this podcast. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks. All right, sweet. Thank you so much, man. That was a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll put like I meant to say I'll say in the intro, I'll put like a link to the article and like in the episode, so hopefully more people find it and check it out too.
Yeah, more and more people that can read about Quentin and get to know him and his close family and friends. It'd be great. So appreciate it.